Well, hello everybody and welcome to a really fascinating session. It will take about 45 minutes today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael Linky. I look after the membership services portfolio here at the Institute of Architects down here in Melbourne, broadcasting yet again from home. Looking forward to getting back into the office at some stage. We're really excited today to be able to be joined by a number of the jurors from the recent Queensland Architectural Awards, which we held a couple of weeks ago. And for us, this is a really exciting opportunity to sort of spend a little bit more time with each of the different entries and to have a bit of a chat with the jurors about their perceptions of the properties and to also have a look and I suppose have a bit of a behind the scenes peek as to their perceptions of being a juror. And so without further ado, we will kick off. Now, I will say that there are sadly a number of people that can't join us today, which is a bit of a pity. But what I thought I would do first of all is share the Mon-Repo Turtle Centre, which was the J.W. Wilson Award for Building of the Year. And that was done by Richard KIRK at KIRK Architects, very well known and recognised, of course. Just confirming everyone can see that on the screen. You're all good, Tanya and Anika, you can see that fine?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Great stuff. So KIRK Architects, they've created a building, which is the Mon-Repo Turtle Centre, which is an absolute delight to visit. The citation talks about these internal spaces reflecting and respectfully responding to natural settings with coastal colours and textures and materials. The timber structure and the beach floors, which is made of a honed concrete product, put the visitors at ease and blur the line between inside and outside. Upon arrival, the dimmed light of the entrance enhances the visitor expectation, and even the acoustic ply diagrid ceiling implies that the visitor is really in turtle territory because it has this turtle carapace-like pattern. The client requirements are creatively achieved throughout the facility, ensuring the turtles remain the hero. Light traps thoughtfully designed into the building fabric prevent light spill at night, and an internal interpretive space of the property ensures that the turtle experience is available regardless of whether the turtles visit that day or not. Sometimes they don't turn up, but you know, even if they're not there, the visitor gets a fantastic experience. The great thing about this building is that the architects have used materials that are sustainable, recyclable, very long wearing, and able to withstand the corrosive sea air. So the copper cladding and the timber that has really helped tie the building into its natural setting. And as this landscape matures around it, the facility will also somewhat disappear, which will leave the elements to project onto pathways, enticing the visitors to enter. So KIRK Architects haven't really designed just a building. They have, with their client, created a series of external and internal spaces that all relate and work together to enhance the visitor's journey and put the turtles on the forefront. So that is the Mon-Repo Turtle Centre, and sadly Richard KIRK couldn't be with us to talk a little bit about that property, but no doubt we'll hear from him at some other stage. The next one is the John Dalton Award for Building of the Year, and this is going to Wilson Architects and Henning Larsen Architects, Architects in Association, for the QUT Peter Coaldrake Education Precinct. So this is a well-considered placement of the new Peter Coaldrake Education Precinct. It has carefully integrated the substantial complex into quite a difficult, deep site in terms of steepness. The planning has established new connections and strengthens existing pedestrian links, and there's a diversity of space for the occupants to experience, from large flexible rooms right through to a range of more intimate places to work and also to study, and many with physical or virtual links to and visual links to the landscape as well. So the pleasure you experience as a student is really heightened by this wonderful, generous garden space that is created by the connection to the existing library building, and the integration of substantial sustainability initiatives was really highly commended by the jury. So that's a great thing to see. What we'll do is we'll then go on to the final final property rather, that has been delivered, and that is LUCENT. And sadly, Plaziabat Architects couldn't be with us as well, and I'll talk a little bit about this project and then we'll move on to our guests online. So LUCENT is an impeccable example of subtropical architecture, and it's reinforced by highly refined and intricate detailing. Services have been addressed with an exceptional level of sophistication, which has enabled the user and the public experience to be prioritised and also celebrated as well. around the perimeter of this building, there's this garden, and it overflows from this floating concrete awning with its perfectly considered grand scale, creating spaces that are inviting but yet rather grand. So they're the three properties where people, in terms of the jurors, couldn't make it to our session today. But I did want to introduce to you Tanya Dennis, who was the regional juror for North Queensland, and she's going to talk a little bit about the Walter Hodgkin Award for the Building of the Year, which was done by Jacobs, which was the replacement Chinook facilities. And Tanya joins me now on this call. How are you, Tanya?
Good.
Good.
Actually, the Walter and Oliver Tunbridge Award for the building.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. So I'm trying to read from about 17 different PowerPoint presentations here.
It's okay.
Epically. So
yeah.
Tanya, tell us a little bit about the replacement Chinook facilities, if that's okay.
Well, the new Townsville Air Base Chinook facility features a central breezeway spine and operable walls within to provide a concentrated, cool working environment for the Chinook maintenance personnel. And they really like their facility. And they have specialist tool storerooms, workshops and testing facilities. And they're all readily and efficiently accessible to the Chinook service base to provide streamlined and precise workflow, which is important, especially with helicopters. The location of managerial spaces enable complete oversight and communication within and to external airside services. Robust materials ensure durability, minimal maintenance, and sit comfortably within the existing base facilities context. The Chinook facility houses a highly specialised team, yet still provides opportunity for personalisation and casual social interaction. And we saw this through some of the tagging in the building, which was really nicely done. This is an obvious source of team spirit and pride in the Australian Chinook Heavy Lift Helicopter Service Team, operational since 1974.
Thank you. A quick one. I mean, your first time judging a jury, especially one that, you know, this year in other states has been deemed necessary due to COVID-19 to be virtual assessment. I mean, how did you go this year? Experiences as a juror, Tanya?
Oh, well, we were lucky enough to actually visit the projects, and judging with Laura, Shannon and Hayley was really good. We talked about the projects and the culture of constructive architecture criticism and the works of architecture, and examined their role as cultural statements or as exponents of, you know, our particular place, Townsville. So, and we found the replacement Chinook facility to be a streamlined facility that was comfortable and welcoming for its users, and basically a nice metaphor for progress at the RAF base in Townsville. So, yeah.
In terms of security, I mean, it obviously must be a fairly difficult site to get access to. I mean, how was it in terms of, I'm just fascinated, you know, in terms of the sort of confidentiality, well, not confidentiality, but the, I suppose, the strict privacy that guards a lot of our defence sites. I mean, was it difficult to get access? Was the client open in terms of, you know, being able to sort of wander around the property and investigate further?
Yeah, well, we had to sign in at the gate and sign a whole bunch of forms and things. That took about 20 minutes, and then we walked throughout the whole facility and into the workshops and the specialist tool areas and testing areas, and then had a look at some of the offices and then the informal spaces. And it was really lovely seeing how people used the whole place, and then how the whole place interconnected people who were working there. And yeah, and it was a nice, cool facility, because on that particular day it was really hot. And as soon as we walked in to the big through the hangar doors, you immediately felt cool, you know, within the workshop space.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Tanya. So we go from the replacement Chinook facilities to the Sunshine Coast. And hopefully joining me is Steve Guthrie. Steve, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Good to have you with us.
Yeah.
I saw you madly sort of messaging me earlier, so it's great to have you joining.
Just got the
So we're now coming to obviously the Gabriel Paul. Obviously, sadly, he passed away earlier this year, but Gabriel Paul Award for Building of the Year in the Sunshine Coast. And that obviously has gone to the Caloundra Christian College, the primary learning centre. So tell us a little bit, great to have you with us, of course, Steve, but tell us a little bit about this project. And
I guess the jury experience in the context, I'll get to the project, but we had 11 entries this year and 7 were houses, three schools. So we had a range and also 1 commercial building, and out of those 11 we ended up with 7 commendations. This building here, the Caloundra Christian College, was a real standout in terms of the process and from an architectural point of view, but also from the advocacy of the architect as leading a very collaborative, client-centered, children-centered process. Something that we felt the Department of Education in Queensland could probably learn a few things from. It was a kind of a clear standout based on that kind of really in-depth process of engagement. I guess was the key thing that was really obvious. And there again, images don't really do these projects justice sometimes. Sometimes they work in reverse, but this was a case of you really needed to visit the project to really understand what the architects had achieved.
it's a beautiful building, and in some ways I regret sharing this external photograph because I don't, like you say, I've seen the inside of it and it doesn't do it justice.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, for those of you who are keen to have a look, even if you go online and have a good look at McLellan Bush Architects and you have just a bit more of a peek through some of their project stuff, the building inside is much more impressive. I mean, it is a nice building externally, let's face it, Steve, but you know, if you go inside, that's where the jewel in the crown really is.
Well, it's really one of those buildings that is designed from the inside out. And so it really works for the kids and the teachers from that point of view. So there's a beautiful central atrium space, which works on the principles of I guess, a village green in a way, with very accessible and permeable classrooms clustered around. So there's a really strong sense of community. So if you do have a look at the internal images, you kind of get a much more. There's a fairly strong urban condition with a couple of busy roads right in this. So that's probably the reasoning for the facade there. But I guess some of the key aspects of the architects were sort of forwarding the new generation of primary learning in terms of having the children be resilient, adaptable, and collaborative. Those 3 things were really apparent in the physical manifestation of the building. And really the architect who led the project and described it to the jury, the jury this year was made up of 3 architects and 1 landscape architect, Draghi Mastorovic, Andrew Cooksley and Sarah Chalkley. And it was good to have a balanced view between architecture and an allied discipline in landscape. And really, we kind of saw some of the other projects through a lens of, I guess, more response to context and place and how successful each project was at those kind of key things.
In terms of your jury assessment process, how much engagement did you have with academic staff and students to actually get their perceptions and thoughts of inhabiting this new space?
One of the I think it was the principal came and gave a brief introduction. But look, the architect is so all over this project and all over the process. It was really inspiring to see a member of our profession who was kind of really put forward as an advocate for arguing for an architect's management process through construction and a really engaging process through design. So she was really fantastic.
Oh, great. That's great. Thank you, Steve. That's a fascinating project. And again, I would commend those on the call. If you do get some time, go and have a look at McLellan Bush Architects and have a good look through the Caloundra Christian College, because while the outside is beautiful, the inside is incredibly stunning and some great work there. Thank you very much, Steve, for your time. Do stay on the line, because I do want to have a little bit of a chat at the end about you sort of collaboratively across the jury pool that are online today, your advice and guidance, because we've had a number of questions from people who are keen to get onto the jury for 2021 and beyond, and what makes for a successful jury visit and team. So what we do now is we go from the Sunshine Coast and we now go north to far north Queensland, and joining us is Carlo Amerio, who is very excited to join us, because he's going to be talking about this beautiful building. This is the Bulumba-ja Centre of Contemporary Arts, done by TPG Architects, and that's won the Eddie Orabin Award for the Building of the Year. Hi, how are you today, Carlo?
Very good, Michael.
Great to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about this. I mean, I love the imagery. It just really speaks to us on so many levels. But tell us a little bit about this Contemporary Arts Centre.
The Contemporary Arts Centre, this particular building's had a few lives in the past. The origin of it was Main Road Department many years ago. I believe the name Bulumba-ja is a term for house for some African Indigenous tribes, and that's how we ended up with that particular labelling. That's what they label that particular building as. But I mean, it's always been an arts building ever since, for quite a few years now, and TPG obviously they have actually, reinvented the building, have in their collaborative design process through Indigenous perspectives to the fore, and has repositioned the site's narratives as a cultural response place. Now, the actual LED art screen, which is one of the most striking elements of the building, especially at night. Obviously, that was very challenging, especially with council, and they had to be very careful for it not to be a rather fast-moving projection of images. So that was a very careful process that TPG had to go through. The veranda effect at the front, I think, is a very welcoming attachment to the building, which basically integrates it with the street, and it actually feels very comfortable when you sort of walk through that space and that veranda, and it actually spills out as part of the foyer when there's entertainment or there's a function in this particular building. They've maintained the building, its original elements, and as a backdrop to the building. So when you look at it, you can see some of the many lives that the building has had, as you see the sides. The much loved cheese grater, which was a two-story screen for the old Main Road building, has been maintained, and it's actually prevents itself with a great backdrop for a green backdrop to the veranda, and it creates a really delightful and generous space in this particular Bulumba-ja house. It incorporates many uses, kick arts, folk art, dance, and obviously the coca area for displays, and it has a bar and restaurant on the ground floor area, which integrates really nicely and feels great to sit there on the street. So that's just a fairly general overview, Michael.
Okay.
of the building. Yes.
All right, great stuff. Thank you, Carlo. Is this your first time judging, being a juror?
I've done a bit of judging quite a few years ago. I've decided to do it this year, just as we didn't have any entries, so I decided to give it a go.
Yep.
It was enjoyable to get away from the office, and luckily for us, we were still able to visit the actual buildings and experience buildings in their reality, which I think is very important. I think, you know, it's always difficult to judge a building basically from images and photos. So I think that process, we were fortunate to be able to still do that, which was great.
I know across all the other regions in Australia that have been severely crippled by COVID, to be able to be a jury member and not see the property that you're assessing has been incredibly difficult and really challenging. And so we just can't wait till all of this is over and we can leave our front bedrooms and our dining tables and that kind of stuff to get back to some semblance of normality. But for 2021, hopefully we will be back out there and having physical jury visits, not only in Queensland, of course, but also across Australia. There seems to be a lot, Carlo, there does seem to be a lot of property development and a lot of major work being invested in the Cairns immediate area. I mean, there seems to be quite a lot of big building work and money invested. Is that what you're seeing as well?
We've just gone through a fairly busy building boom. As for those who are not aware, we've had 3 hotels being built at the same time. You know, fairly large hotels. We've you know, there's been civic centres being built, parks rejuvenated. The Cairns Convention Centre is now being constructed. So yes, we've had a busy season, but it's most of those, other than the Cairns Convention Centre expansion, most of the work has been completed now, and we are hoping that there's other work and other large projects that take over.
Mm. It's very good for domestic tourism, and I mean, we've seen Simon Birmingham, the federal minister, just talk about the issues that we probably won't be able to travel outside of Australia or welcome international visitors in until at least 2021. So it's a good opportunity for some domestic tourism, and so these sort of projects really highlight the great work that's being done by a lot of our members all across Australia. But that's great. Thank you so much, Carlo, for joining us and for talking to us about the Bulumba-ja Centre for Contemporary Arts. It is absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love this property, and one of my particular favourites. From the far north Queensland, we're going to head back down south, and joining us is Anika Aspland. Great to have you with us, and we are going to talk about the building of the year, which is, as you can see there, St Joseph's College, Coomera by Macksey Rush. Anika, how are you today?
Well, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about this project.
It's one that unfolds as you walk through it. Again, it's, you know, it's really great to see it there in the flesh, and because it's a staged process that they've gone through to achieve this fantastic set of buildings. It really takes, you know, moving between them and seeing the students interact with the spaces to really appreciate them. I think that we were very pleased to see the strength of the composition, and there was a significant strength in the character. You can even see it just on this elevation here. There's a kind of quite a rawness and also almost semi-industrial use of materials, but then when you get into the detail of actually experiencing the spaces, there's also this intimacy and this lovely kind of softness and connection with the landscape. And I think that, you know, obviously economic factors were an issue, and it was really, really interesting to see how hardworking some of the materials really were to achieve, you know, just very clever landscaping, simple screens with, you know, ventilation, really interesting approaches to ablutions facilities, you know, important for schools. And so they had you know, boys and girls separated, and then they also had, in the way that you normally would, but then they also had the option for individual cubicles, so you didn't have to face the whole idea of the joined, you know, bathroom setup. So it's like very interesting and thought-provoking. Felt as well that, you know, you could very clearly see the bones of the project there, even though there's, you know, many stages to come. They seemed to be managing that incredibly well as well, you know, as in building in periods where kids are on holidays, and, you know, really thinking through and fabricating in such a way that, you know, that the sequence was working well without it being disruptive to existing students. And yeah, really wonderful resonance between the landscape and then also, you know, the built form, and yeah, really for me it was the incredible strength, but then also this real softness and intimacy that I took away from it as being very, very successful.
It's interesting you mentioned that sort of mix, because from the outside, this to me looks like sort of a quite, like you said, an industrial sort of almost airline hangar style approach. You know, it's quite not brutal from the outside, but it is very industrial, I suppose. And it's lovely to hear about that sort of warmness and that welcoming vibe that you get when you walk into the property. Tell me about it, because looking at it, and I've had a peek before about it, but it has got quite a beautiful sort of colonnaded brick quadrangle, hasn't it, at the back?
Yes,
Obviously,
yes.
once you go in. Tell me a little bit about that.
So as we approached, actually, as you know, as we approached the school, this is what you see when you arrive, and really it's not until you go behind this, you know, this front face of the school that you really experience how it sits in the landscape and how the different areas interact. So they actually on the rear elevation of these more public structures here, you know, there's this softening of materials, and then as you mentioned, there's this wonderful brick colonnade, and immediately the scale drops, you know, from this very, like, almost like you say, airline hangar industrial scale to one that's much more intimate. And also what happens is that topography works with the project, you know, kind of leading you up the hill that sits behind, and the smaller structures that are these almost like these pods of building that form classrooms, and then, you know, ablutions facilities, they work up that you know, the topography, and so there becomes a dialogue that immediately softens the intensity of these more public spaces. But in some way it's very respectful, and, you know, you feel respected as a, you know, a person walking around this campus. I think that's what's so successful as well about the project is, you know, it really has a very strong vision, and they've managed to carry it off. We were a little hesitant at the beginning when we approached, and also we're a little bit challenged by this this panelled, the coloured panel, kind of, I'm not sure if it's an artwork there that works with the building, and felt when we were leaving that, gosh, there's just so much, you know, hidden behind this particular, you know, viewpoint that we're looking at right now. So yeah, very important to walk the grounds and also, you know, listen to the stories of how the design evolved and you know, the wishes of the, you know, of the school, and yeah, very, very good.
Oh, that's great. In terms of speaking to the academic staff, again, my same question to you at this point, did you get an opportunity to engage with the actual, you know, daily users of the building to get their thoughts on how it made them feel and how the building emoted to them?
we didn't speak to staff and students. However, we did see the building, you know, on a weekday, obviously, and it was being actively used. So there were times where the cola that you can see in this particular image here, you know, was full of students. We could see the classrooms being used, a very interesting setup of classrooms that were able to be opened to one another. With locker areas that could be used for many different purposes. So lots of, you know, flexibility was built into the planning, and just a really lovely balance of, you know, detailing to sort of more open space that you could almost dream into, you know, your own kind of ideas. So not overbearing as either. And I think, you know, it was very tough cost-wise. Like they, you know, they had to work hard for every dollar spent. And I just think, you know, that materials were really used successfully. It was a delicate balance that they had to run. And yeah, you know, we all felt very, you know, buoyed by that.
It's beautiful to see, you know, even when budget is an issue, you can still build something of beauty that is really impactful. So well done. I think it's a beautiful project. And thank you for that, Anika. What I will say, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. We're going to jump back into this element. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unmute those jurors who are with us. Now, there are a number of people on this call, and I would like to say, feel free to use the chat button, even if you want to raise your hand on this conference call, and I'm happy to unmute you as well for those who are out there in Cyberland and watching on. If you have any questions, well, we'll keep it very light and casual, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, do feel free to use the chat box, and then we can go through those questions, or raise your hand and I'll happily bring you into the chat as well. There's only a few of us on this call, so we'll just keep it fairly light. Advice, again, Carlo, you've given me, you have given me some great answers there in terms of advice for jurors, but has anybody else got any advice? There are always members across the Institute of Architects who are keen to get onto panels, and we always need member engagement, especially in Queensland where we have got such a wide region. Any good advice to wannabe jurors?
Look, yeah, go for it, Tanya. Up to you.
I think it's important to have a multidisciplinary team, so people from, you know, all walks of life, including architects. And there's nothing beats actually visiting a project in person. So I think for establishing the regional importance to a piece of architecture to a place, you actually have to go there and visit it, and as you said, experience the place and the people that work within that place, and how it all the ripples kind of work in with the actual broader community and region.
Yeah, it is very important to have people from different walks of life to assess. Otherwise, you get, you know, sort of wedded to one particular design. And then we have seen in the past, not so much anymore, but we have seen jurors who have a particular affinity for steel, and all the awards go to the steel. You know, anything that uses a lot of one particular product. But it is good to have that mix, and we're very keen on making sure that that mix has worked so well in 2020 continues into 2021 and beyond as well. Anika, what about you in terms of your advice for jurors as well? Any advice?
It wasn't my original intention, and also I've just been in this area for 3 years, so I actually found it very, you know, interesting to see local projects and see what's, you know, what's being done. I came to it really because there was a shortage, I think, and you know, a friend who's quite involved tapped me on the shoulder and just said, look, would you consider taking the time? And I felt it was really great. I was working with Jasper and Justin, and you know, just the conversations and really you know, appreciating, like we're talking about, projects in the flesh important, and then having that discussion to really, you know, come to a position. I think it's a great process. I absolutely recommend it.
Oh, good. And it doesn't need to be. The nice thing is you don't need to be, like you say, you've only been in that sort of area for 3 years. We're not looking for jurors, you know, who have spent 50 years in the profession. This is an opportunity for people at all stages of the architectural journey to get onto the juror experience, and that's something that we're very keen to perpetuate, is to make sure that we have people from different realms and also from different levels of experience joining us to make sure that we have a real holistic, clear, defined assessment process as well. Steve, I know you were going to say some stuff, mate, as well, just in relation to your advice for jurors.
Look, I guess this was my first experience being on the jury, and I just really kicked myself for not putting my hand up sooner, to be honest. But because it's an incredible privilege in terms of the clients and the architects sharing their projects and being intimately involved in how, what are the key aspects, and I guess the other thing is the collegiate nature of the jury. We found ourselves in, being inspired by each other, but also in, I would say robust conversation, which was very stimulating for all. And I think it was just the week before we had the real lockdown, and I found myself here back at the studio really missing that previous week's experience. We had, I think, 4 days of, kind of meeting up, looking at projects, and then getting back together and just talking about them. And you had that experience and then just really missed it the next week. So I'd compel anybody vaguely interested in putting their hand up to go for it, because it's a privilege and an inspiring process to be part of.
Yeah, it is. I mean, never before has that collegiate atmosphere really been missed more. I've not seen any of my colleagues now for, this is the 13th week that I've stayed at home, and I'm climbing the walls in terms of just sheer, not boredom with work at all, but there's plenty of work to be done, but just boredom of being in the same jolly room. Just can't wait to get back to some semblance of normality. But in Victoria, it looks like we're going backwards instead of forwards, which is a real pity. But the collegiate atmosphere, it's interesting you say that, Steve, because so many people always talk about having friends for life, the jury pool, they get on really well. And of course, the Institute, we look after you in terms of travel and accommodation and make sure we feed and water you. And it sounds like there's always been some really fantastic opportunities to sort of get, and build your own networks through those jury pools as well. So thank you for your advice. Carlo, what I've been doing with you is I've been trying to madly click to ask you to unmute, but you refuse. I'm wondering if you could kindly just take yourself off mute, if that's okay. I'm wondering if you have any other additional advice just in relation to your sort of key 101 guides and advice to those people that maybe are looking to join an architectural jury pool. He's still on mute. Carlo, can you, I'm not sure if, I've asked you to unmute, but I'm not sure if you're having much success there, mate. I'm so sorry. I don't know what we're doing there. He's going to get up and go to the machine. I suppose no one else has asked any questions on the chat. So I am sorry, Carlo. I may have to bypass you until I can see your, there you are, Carlo, you're off.
Okay.
The joys of live
TV.
TV.
It was hiding under another little label.
Oh, okay, no worries, but good to have you back with us. We've heard some fantastic stuff from Anika and Tanya and Steve. What about you in terms of your experience as a jury? Recommend it? Yes, no? I mean, I know everyone's really busy.
Absolutely. Young sort of architects should definitely put their hand up. I mean, because where else can you go out and experience firsthand, great projects in reality? Normally you'll be just looking at them in architectural magazines and that. So, I'd encourage them to do that, and it's a very, very rewarding thing. And also judging your colleagues' work, it's always a privilege, and it's great to get in trouble with your peers as well, sort of discussing the benefits and the merits of each submission. And I find at the end of the day, after 2 solid days or so, it's always a rewarding process. And I'd encourage any young architect to go out and do it.
It's interesting because we don't really, to be honest, not so much in Queensland, but in some states, we really struggle to get people to put their hand up to volunteer to become a juror. And we find that a real struggle. And then sometimes people almost sort of self-nominate themselves away from the process because, they think that they're not qualified enough, or they feel nervous about judging the work of their peers and that kind of stuff. But we always have strongly recommended, if you can get onto a jury, please do it, because it's a great opportunity. And we're only judged obviously by the work of our peers, but it's just such an integral process. And we are very proud of it. We are one of the only professional bodies properties that still do face-to-face. Obviously, let's forget COVID for a minute, but we still do face-to-face, and we plan to continue to do face-to-face assessments. So many other peak bodies along similar veins to ours always just go, yep, let's have a look at that photograph. Yep, that looks great. We'll give that the prize. But nothing beats walking in and the joy of hearing you all talk about the experiences you get, the emotions you feel when you walk into a property is so much more important than doing anything on paper. And so you are very much in a blessed situation in Queensland to be able to have had that opportunity, because for the rest of us in Australia, we've really had to just lay our cards literally on the table and assess blueprints and briefs and just photographic evidence, which has just taken a lot of the joy away for many of our peers in other states. That's really it at this stage. So thank you so much for all of your time. To Carlo, to Anika, to Tanya and to Steve, thank you so much for joining us. There is one question from Alice-Anne McRobbie, of course, our state manager in Queensland, and I'm going to just do a quick fire round. And she said, what was the most aha moment that you found as a jury? Let's start with Tanya. What's your most aha moment that you found on the jury? Something that was incredibly enlightening that you didn't expect?
I think just being with my peers and then the community and hearing, what locals say about each project.
And Anika, what about you?
That the winners are easily identified. So what I mean is, that we'd all walk around a project, not say a word, just observing, and then we'd come away from it and all be, very excited about. Yes, exactly. I think that, that was only the ones that were sort of in between that were harder. So that was, I think, very, very important moment. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Anika. And what about you, Steve?
It's similar to Anika, really. We had an incredible high level of projects this year, and it was really hard. And it was kind of the ones that we felt were the winners were the ones that basically jumped out and gave you that wow, that experience. And we didn't say anything until leaving, obviously. But when we left, it was kind of, we all knew that, wow, that's the one. I guess the other thing that was a real delight in the Caloundra Christian College was the way the architect and landscape architect had really collaborated, because what wasn't shown in the photo, but it's a really strong play-oriented learning space. So the landscape architecture and the play spaces outside and the way they interact with inside was just really well done. And I think, one couldn't really exist without the other. And that's kind of a nod to being allied with the fellow designers.
And finally, to you, Carlo, what's your biggest aha moment? Something you didn't expect?
A fantastic bakery on the tablelands.
This is the thing. Honestly, I mean, quite often when I work with jurors day in, day out, and they talk about the best pub and the best bakery, it's the little things as well. I mean, the properties, of course, and the developments that you're going to assess play a huge part, but it's also the camaraderie, and it is the bakeries, without a doubt.
There was no pubs open, so bakeries would be next.
I know.
That was great. Look, there was a couple of projects really that surprised me when I was there. The Bulumba-ja was great, but there were a couple of others that was always a surprise. And not just one particular item in this case, but sometimes there is, but there was certainly a few items, yeah.
You feel good that the state of the architectural profession is in good hands in terms of, just the future direction of where it's going in the state? Some of the incredible work that you've seen makes you feel good about architecture? And its importance?
It does. Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, we had 13 submissions this year, and that's quite a low submission in this area, and they're all fairly close. I mean, sometimes we have to travel quite far to see some of these submissions up at the Cape, and those sorts of areas, but we didn't have to do that this time. It was all fairly close, so we could do it in just a short couple of days. I found it sort of quite rewarding. Yeah.
No, that's great. We had, like Alice-Anne put on the chat, we had We had 50 jurors, over 50 actually, in Queensland. That's a lot of jurors to coordinate all of that travel and that kind of stuff. An immense pool of really talented people, including yourselves, who have given a huge amount of time, effort, energy and dedication of making sure that the process was upheld to the highest level. So a huge thank you to you all, and obviously the four of you on my call, but also to the 46 plus others that have also dedicated a huge amount of their time. We are not a peak body without the great work that you do. So thank you so much. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you join us today. As well, obviously we continue to go around the country. Obviously we had what we have on Friday night, we had the Northern Territory Architecture Awards, and we have more coming up. So obviously to those on the call, please keep an eye out and tune in to see what else is happening around Australia. Those were judged virtually, so that's going to be interesting. So count yourself lucky, Queensland. But that's really it for today. And I do want to say Natalie has put a note on the call, actually, Natalie Bush, who joins us. In terms of site visits on the morning of the 10th of July as well. So she just says, thanks Michael, Stephen, AIA and the members of the juries, Green Edge, Caloundra, CC and the NBA organising site visits on the morning of the 10th. So stay tuned for details. Thanks for that, Natalie. So that's it for today. I'm Michael Linky. I'm down here in isolation in Melbourne, continuing to isolate. It's great to have you with us. Thanks everybody for your time today just to go through those projects. They are really impressive, and once again, stay safe, and I look forward to catching up with you all, maybe face to face when we're through the other end of COVID. But great to spend some time with you. Thanks very much, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks.